Welcome to Poetry Square. I'm Diane Funston, YubaSutterArts&Culture Poet in Residence, and welcome to National Poetry Month, April. Every April, we have poetry springing out of the ground in springtime, just like other things that are surrounding us in bloom. And for those of us poets who belong to other groups, keep watching your Facebook feed because I'm sure email too. There are many things going on all over for National Poetry Month. And many of them are virtual. So you can join from wherever you are, like me, from your living room chair. So welcome again. I want to thank Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture for taking such an interest in poetry as they do, with offering several poetry venues. There is also a poetry and popcorn on April 23rd. If anyone is local to Yuba or Sutter County, or even Sacramento, if you want to take a drive, that will be 6:00 p.m. at the newly redone Sutter Theater on Plymouth Street in Yuba City. And it'll be a nice event with several local poets, including myself, doing some reading. But anyway, we can get on with our reading. And I'm going to start off in the manner of springtime. And I'm a gardener, as many of my friends know. And so I came in this morning from planting my tomatoes and my pumpkins and tomatillos. And next week, when I come back from being gone for Easter, I will plant more. So here in California, we're praying for rain all the time. And rain is on the forecast for tonight. And we're all hoping it's not a teaser like it's been off and on. So I'm going to start off with a poem called Early Tulips. The tulips brought a smile to the garden variety landscape. Their tall, reed-like stems dance a little samba in the front yard, confined to terracotta but swaying anyway, to high desert wind in primitive, recurrent rhythm. Mixed colors, yes, all stemming from red, scarlet, unabashed love, purple, contained passion, orange, sunsets, comfort, a garden of enchantment. Your boyish grin, your earth-shadowed eyes, protective fingers laced through mine, we await the summer flowers, ripe fullness, maturity, but enjoying the smiles early tulips bring, following cold winter. And at the time that poem was written, I lived in the very high desert in Nevada, and 6,000 feet. So it was nice to see those tulips blooming. And this one is called Slip Dream. At night, when we're asleep, the door opens, they slip in. Phantoms from an old attic, a previous time, high lofty rafters, pull chain light bulb in the middle when the pitch of the roof joins. Darkness scurries away towards unfinished walls, hidden in shadows, awake and waiting. When time out of our hands, the clock stopped at midnight. The hour ghosts begin to dance. Old style, a curtsy and a bow, top hat, tips revealing sunken eyes. A bony hand that reaches for hers, pulls her to embrace, twirling in the dance. Music from the gramophone in the corner, the one covered in dust. A pile of 78s. A spider walks across the vinyl. Songs from World War I, the war to end all wars. Old record repeats again and again, sticks in grooves, skips generations sometimes. The Alice blue gown still in plastic, tuxedo and tails hangs in the corner, moves only from a draft, dances when armies of rats rush, seeking one another in the dark. And as I mentioned, I'm a gardener. I have a lot of fruit trees. I have a little mini farm in an urban area. So this is called kumquats. Trying them for the first time at a tea room in a salad, a miniature orange, I thought, biting into the middle, feeling the tang, the almost sour surprise on my palate, followed by sweetness. Today, I have 2 trees in my front yard, under the window. Sweet blossom scent wafts inwards, biting into the harvest, the reality of both sensations, sweet and sour, taken in small measure, moments of a lifetime. And one of the trees that I have, which is extremely aggressive, usually in a good way, is my black mission fig. Black mission fig, you tower over all. Reach up tall for power, for electricity in wires above. You slap a back with leaves large as big man's hands on tributaries from main trunk thick as elephant muscle. Rising high, you reign, Queen Khalifa of the garden. Other fruit trees bow below your ample shadows, like many hands waving to entitled royalty. We bow in respect on day of pruning, remove suckers and hangers on, search your raiments with saw and shear in our steady work of cracking branches. Take only the necessary for the promise of more obsidian fruit come spring. Black Mission Mother, your fruit has blessed mouths of saints and sinners alike. We do not tame you nor hold you back. The generosity of long history, your fertility from the chalice to the blade. And this one kind of sprouted out of a conversation I had with one of my 3 sons about the collections I have and, the garden that we put in and, how generations now, young people, they don't want their parents' stuff when they pass on. So this came out of that conversation. Man in the moon. I'll plant a pink dogwood tree next week, but not for my children. My sons will sell this house after I'm gone to grave. They'll want none of my collections. My garden could be plowed under, returned to wasteful, unimaginative lawn, fertilized, manicured, round-upped. My rocks and minerals, 2 big glass cabinets full, will be eBayed and auctioned to a highest bidder, despite the eons to form and my many years to collect them. The glass curio of Mexican folk art, Dia de los Muertos, Katrinas and Katrines, skulls and fantasy animals abriges, will cross the border of my home to be scattered to thrift stores, along with never-fading Talavera. Will the man in the moon still be there, along with lunar art, sculptures of Moon Mother received with love, gifts from friends who knew my spirit, or the polar bears, my spirit animal, my drive for solitude and strength? Books will be in the hands of strangers, all the poetry of knowns and unknowns, all their passionate words, brave insertions, the literature from brave new worlds, gathering dust instead of discussion at the local Goodwill. So I'll plant the pink dogwood next week into my lush front garden, devoid of pedestrian lawn, amidst fruit trees and vegetable plots, succulents and a redwood. I'll live my life in the pleasure of my curated joy, my lust for travel and adventure, until I too am plowed under, forever facing upward. Will the man in the moon still be there? And this one is called California Dreaming. A staghorn fern mounted to a moss-covered board hangs high on an old nail up on the trunk of the liquid amber tree. I missed the elk-like rack of pliable leaves. Dry from drought, the garden is thirsty midwinter. Petunias hang bonneted heads under sunshine. Succulents swell from my hose, not the quench of Mother Nature. My dogs play tags through the trees. The conifers bow and curtsy on windy days like these that scatter rose petals into the swimming pool. Dogs slow down and rest a while, enjoying the warm, sunny pavement instead of days inside from skirting rain for those most necessary times. At night, I sleep under the silent skylights of our bedroom, daydream the rhythm of rain above me. And this one is called Flammable, and it's in the San Diego Poetry Annual this season. Smoke signals from miles away, strong scent of campfires everywhere, hazy overhead heavy air, unhealthy to breathe. Pine trees, flammable Roman candles lit by something, someone, deliberate, accidental, an act of miscalculated stupidity mixed with drought and wind. And conifers alight leap from one another in a mishappening of fire atop a foothill's birthday cake, and the old sayings, we all fall down, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Dare they build again in the enchanted forest, lured by the dream of living wild, an authentic life in the woods, nature out the back door. But remember, fire makes nature stronger, cracks open pine cones that wouldn't germinate without that lick of flame, awakening them. Animals scatter to lower ground, reassess instinct into strategy, unlike humans who rebuild again and again. And this is called Stirring Still Water, and Cascadilla Falls is one of the many waterfalls in upstate New York where I'm from, and this is in the town of Ithaca where Cornell University is, and it's a place I love to walk when I visit. Cascadilla Falls flows heavy in summer, raging at times. I drive up to the university, roam Cornell Gardens, rest at the lily ponds. I watch for the huge turtle. It paddles under the bridge, disappears to the other side. I wonder if it's about its reappearance, how it glides with cactus pad feet, scars on an elderly shell. Fish school on either end, swim parallel to its girth. It moves like the Titanic. Had someone been paying attention? Its boiler room gut raging forward, not vertical like Cascadilla Falls, specific, terminal. Waterfall spray meets the air's humidity in a luscious dance of tango coming together. Then the drama, release and splash. The turtle knows no such passion, searching for food, coming up for air, a slowness, a stirring, something primal in still water. And this is kind of about violence in the garden, because we all think of the garden as very peaceful, but sometimes there are things that go on unseen, except for those of us looking very closely. Benevolence of the garden, flowers nod in breezes, fruit appears after flowers, bees drink cocktails of pollen, but snails enter pie pans of beer, sober and slowly moving, stay beyond last call, float dead. Pruning shears lop and top, snip even the buds, all in a master plan of making more produce from less. Neem oil deters aphids, also the release of ladybugs, a praying mantis or two, beheads beetles in a crisp bite. There is violence in paradise, a pulled weed left in bright sun before joining the compost. Good bacteria breaks it down, and for a bed of preferred foliage, Weeds with just as much life, some with lacy blooms culled for the chosen, groomed for success. Then the leaves, peels past prime, vegetation mourns into rich soul, supports those cultivated ones we kiss, lick, and swallow, love and tragedy in one growing season. Okay, let me see what we have here. Okay, I think I have two more, and I'm going to finish before we go on to our next poet. And this one is called The Nerve. My pickup was named Fiona, bright red, because my ex said I wouldn't have the nerve. The men at the dump ogled her, whistled, called her beautiful, built, stacked red, well, with the green waste that I dropped off. They even helped when I unloaded my ex's golf clubs, called out, "Hey, darling, let me help you with that." Now Fiona lives out her days at my son's farm up north. We have downsized to one vehicle, a staid gold SUV no one ever comments on. But back in the desert, old dirt roads, ruts, and washboards, in and out of the cab collecting rocks on the dry lake bed, gravel spinning on those big tires. I left those dirt roads years ago, been on pavement ever since. I've never been afraid of red. My blood, my sex, my heart. An exclamation point on the road, spilled paint, roadkill, rose petals. The real inside of the poet. Okay, and I'm going to finish with this last one called Ghostly Poem. I can see you sleeping in our bed. My empty space embraces you. You can't see the mattress breathing up and down like many times spent in our lifetime together. You may not feel my presence as I tuck the comforter around you. I have always been your comforter, you, my cushion and pillows. I bury my face into your back, kiss more strength between your fingers, rub more courage into your toes. I am still with you, the scent in the room, the taste in your mouth, the first words you'll speak in the morning. Thank you. Now we're going to hear from our next poet, Susan Kelly DeWitt, who's coming to us from up the road in Sacramento.
Hi. Thank you, Diane. That was a lovely reading, Diane. And thanks to the Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture Center for having me as a guest reader today. I'm going to read mostly from my new book, probably entirely from my new book, Gatherer's Alphabet. And also, I just want to say how nice it is for me to be reading for you guys today, because I'm the Yuba City High class of 1965 and spent a number of years there. So it's really fun for me to be doing this reading. I'm not going to say too much as I go through it. Occasionally I'll make a few comments, but I'm going to just mostly read the poems. I'm going to start with the first poem in the book, Calling the Horses. You whistle, and they turn their heads. A roan mare pushes up slowly from the dusky pasture grasses. A palomino and a chestnut bay follow in sequence behind her. They move toward us without conviction. The mare's belly slumps with the weight of her unborn foal as we call to them across barbed wire. In our minds, we beg for the victory of their close looks, but they stop, refuse to look longer, turn away the grazing darkness of their eyes, fall back to each other. Wild oats silver the fields. Bluebottles leap up along the roadside in 4 fringed colors. I stoop to gather a few wild panicles. The crushed juice of the broken stems perfumes my thumbs. It feels like beauty, the way the colors hold themselves out to be touched. My mother at evening. Look how the rays of late sunlight break around her, tinting her storm-colored hair. The way tawny specks of sunset silt the sleeves of her sky blue blouse, and pink motes halo her thin silhouette as she stoops to gather early star drifts, nectarine daylilies. Look how that frail curvature, that tissue-fine remnant of bone and hope still struggles to light inside her body as she bends to tug a weed from between pale roots or trowel clumps of dirt from a berm, as if to unbury something secret, a white bulb of silence. I do write a lot about nature, using nature in my poems. I grew up in a tropical rainforest in Hawaii and was surrounded by plants and bugs and creatures. Um, uh, and so a lot of them make their way into my poems. Hummingbird Sutra. Every live bird is a thrumming under the ribs. The song sparrow, Melospisa melodia, wearing clear feathers of wind. Even tyrant crows, that hunger and glint, lift like beauty in my throat. But when a hummingbird hangs like a small wheel of fire above a bleeding heart's hooded inner life, when it pierces a sunflower's honeycomb eye to suck the rough sweetness or dips to sting a ragged fringe cup with its bliss, I want to shake myself loose, fledge iridescent feathers of human song. This next poem comes out of my involvement in the early 1970s with the charismatic movement in the Catholic Church, which involved speaking in tongues, prophecy, and a lot of other sort of things like that. So this is called Brother Mockingbird. And it's also kind of for the mockingbird that is always on our antenna outside. Brother Mockingbird, Charismatic Movement, 1972. Mockingbird, you speak in tongues, as I once did when I was young and traveled the circuits of the faithful strange. Was it your complicated song that rose and multiplied from the basement of St. Francis Church on L Street as your cousin, the Holy Spirit, descended upon the crowd? I suppose somewhere in the attics of time, the ghosts are still gathered there, arms uplifted, conducting spirit with electrified tongues. I must exist there also, shadow self, peal of atoms, the tempest in my mouth, a full blast audio, taste buds prickling with sanctified noise. Impossible to understand without some impromptu autodidact of glossolalia to step forth and translate. Mockingbird, good brother, you are a workhorse of a working bird this morning, hauling your hearty chapel of repertoire, your steady, hopeful stream of fluctuating trill, apostle of gloss, tail feathers pumping, holy lowercase unroller of song. Next poem is called Moro Bay Sketch, and I'm referring to Moro Bay on the California coast. Moro Bay Sketch. I saw the comb jellies gleaming, beached ink and crystal in the sea wind's cold fire, and the egrets waiting, their sickle necks muscling under the quartz feathers, the beaks harpooning, working the weed rack and foam lip, juggling up a flash, a hopeless flip and urgent splash of writhing through the sand grit and surf crack. Was there some calligrapher hiding in the cloud shift that wrestled and boiled in over them? Some itchy finger or twitchy nib that sketched them in, that outlined them all over with restless mercury? This is a poem about something that actually we encountered in Paris in 2006. It's called Angel Behind Bars, Paris 2006. It was hard to tell if they were raising or lowering it into or out of the Parisian light. Angel that could be measured in years or tons, weather-worn, pitted, gray, like all the old ideas of heaven. If a crane had played God, it had vanished for the day. There was a turquoise strap chained to its throat, as though a piece of sky had been torn into scraps to tether it steady. If faith is a dark cellar, the angel's feet were just a few steps away. And the bars? Okay, they were only the guardrails above the cellar stairs. Still, the eyeless eyes held something prisoner there. This next poem is about Georgia O'Keeffe. I've spent a lot of time studying her work over the years, and there's a little epigraph from a letter from her friend Anita Politzer, where she said the calla, so it's about calla lilies. She said the calla's made for you to paint. Callas. She's out in a dusty field, painting the white funnels stubbed with nubs of butter color. Her ivory shirt sleeves spattered in oils, scrolled up over thick, useful wrists. No matter if the field's in her mind, there's a burning, a wind wild as loneliness, an open space between two faraway ridges. The callas unfold slowly, reluctantly. She grows stubbornly toward each flower, like an eye toward its only light. I like to read this poem each time I do a reading. It's a long one, and it was included in an anthology called Letters. I've always meant to tell you, Letters to Our Mothers, that came out in the 90s, mid 90s. And this is called To My Mother on Her 76th Birthday August 12th, 1995. And it's written in a haiku-like syllabic form. The hard green fingers of the trumpet vine beckon. Evening approaches. The fountain at dusk swallows its own music, sad notes in dying light. A night wind walks by. Whoosh! Dark eyes, an old gray head enter the forest. 1. There was a secret book in your heart. It was a book of poetry written by you if you'd had a different life, with a grass linen cover and embossed letters like bamboo. It was autographed by you. Out of the mother, out of the hull of the shipwrecked being, I come. 2. Who made the world? I asked you once, years before you could hear, as the dust of stars gathered me from the void's farthest edges. Adrift of unborn, far out on the string of your being, I floated. I waved like a pale handkerchief. Hello. When the sea wind pounded waves on Kona's lava ledges, when it churned greenish white along the black sand beaches where you collected sea snails and played your childhood games, I felt how you carried me in your pockets like an unwritten letter. I circled above you like 100 wild white birds, calling, calling, white feathers of me, 3, falling all around you, softly as a breath of snow. You looked up beyond and through me as if straining for a glimpse, though I was less than a mist. Almost as if you heard me after all, my unborn voices, which were not yet one voice, one sad song woven from yours, voice spun from silence, all the years you sat still at your school desk, not speaking unless spoken to. I was braided like ribbon into the tamed gloss of your onyx hair. Whenever you dipped your fountain pen in peacock blue in peacock blue ink, droplets of my uncreated being oozed from the pen. I was almost a word. 4. Out of the mother, out of the hull of the shipwrecked being, I come. With ash in my hair, with ash in my mouth, but still singing hymns, praises, O sky, O sea, O clear blue air, singing hymns and praises to silent mothers whose bones burn clean, whose flesh turns into air, whose words were never spoken, whose poems were never known, never sung. Oh, there are thousands of such women, such lovely women with poems locked tight in their hearts, words chained to their lips, struggled words, strangled tales, joys, even joys untold. 5. The hard green fingers of the trumpet vine beckon. Evening approaches. 6. Your quiet mother, her composed sadness in its ivory dress, lace of bones, and her own mother, immigrant soul, who went blind from stitching other people's clothes. The one who came round Cape Horn on the High Flyer, a 4-month journey, who gave birth in steerage, fed the baby crumbs, told how even the crew learned to starve, who blessed the ground when she walked on it again, are present in me, the blessing, the rough passage of the words, that needle, silence, needle of history, sharp family blood drops. 7. The fountain at dusk swallows its own music, sad notes in dying light. 8. Every created being needs some forgiveness. The grave won't forgive. It's up to us. There were things you didn't do right, the mistakes you made. Just living is hard enough. Who knows how to keep a girl's perfect heart? All I know is I was growing like a woods in the unformed dark of your hope, the bad dreams yet to come, the marriage to my father who loved and tormented us, the deaths of your beloved mother and father. and still I'm growing toward something, though I know not what, beloved. 9. A night wind walks by. Whoosh. Dark eyes, an old gray head, enter the forest. Cemetery song. Who is to say they aren't tucked into the ground to sweeten it like lavender sachet? How can we be sure they aren't sublimely gathered together into a deathless bouquet, swaying in a vessel of starshine, ghostly and fresh in their roomy arrangements? Tell me I am not planted here alone among the silent stones, chiseled glyphs. Migration. Many birds forming one bird, a child's charcoal scrawl made of embers, flickering afternoons when the eye flares skyward and imagination cools to memory, a quick, graceful stroke released above an intemperate horizon. On a clear day, in a bleak January of days, this welcome dissolving arrangement. Something wild and beautiful passes over, weaving out of that vast mapping a direction hope follows, past vision, to a south of the mind, a paradise of wishes. And I'll just finish now with the last poem in the book. Or maybe I'll do two quick ones. Economies of Being. I could not bear to throw it out, the leftover salad. Too pretty, and the leaves took so long to arrive, each one like a landscape seen from above with a river and tributaries. Dark green against the oranges in a bowl the exact color of larkspur. So I ate it with oil and vinegar, with sprinkles of pepper and salt. I chewed each bite slowly, like someone who has gone a long time without food, though I felt no bodily hunger. And I will finish with the last poem in the book, Autumnal Equinox. The stars clicked on late. I lounged aimlessly in my room. Outside, crazed moths were sucking and grazing the crimped lips of trumpet flowers. It seemed like everyone I knew had something precious to give away, some mystery free for the taking. When I lifted my face from a book, I remembered every happiness, every kindness ever accorded me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to be here. So flattered to be invited. I'm down in way down south in San Diego, and I was wanting to. I was kind of wanting to find some poems that had a theme, that were thematically connected, and I did. I was surprised, but so they will be about. The 1960s, when I was a flight attendant, and I was on the road a lot. And the company was a private company that we flew people, ball teams and soccer teams and people like that. We flew the old Douglas DC-3 airplanes, which are also known as the Goonie Birds, because they were from World War II. They were ponderous, slow, but workhorses, and they kind of have a cult following. And I became very fond of these old airplanes. So that's what the 4 poems I brought, and they're very short. will have to do with that time. The first one is the Goonie Bird. It is because I am in love with the sky, the blue in it, and the white, and the machines that fly there. And it is because I once soared inside a metal bird left over from a war that took my father to an island, bleeding death and sand, in the year that I was born. Maybe that is why they call to me these machines of slow air and patient drone. If I had one now, I would paint it over with ferns and hibiscus. And between the passenger windows where logos used to be, I'd set coiling snakes to signal my place of secrets, that I have them, that such a place exists. I would take it with me, this airborne beast whose skin, like the tattooed lady, holds the forest where my generations sleep. I will ride my old bird as I rise into the sky, into the blue, into the white, its hull painted over with my jungle soul. Okay. Sorry. Okay. This one is entitled On the Road, because there was a time for about a year I was only home 4 days a month, and we lived on these plains. I spent more time in the plains than I did anywhere else. So this is about being on the road. For a time I lived en route, set apart from, outside of things, in a special state. And in such states, there's never a where there, traveling away from or headed toward, but never there or anywhere. At home, always getting ready to leave. On the road is observing from the edges, only touching base, never staying long. I belong to the sky, the airports, the restaurants, slept best on board, engines lulling, and always found inside those times, something unnameably safe. And the very exciting day, I guess I should set this next poem up. It's called Landing, the Day I Landed the DC-3. Don't laugh. This is true. Because all of our pilots were World War II pilots, and they all had their instructor's licenses. And when we ferried the planes, with no passengers from one city to the other, which was usually at night, one of the either the captain or the co-pilot would go back into the cabin and sleep, and they would let me come up and sit in the other seat and fly the plane. I mean, they were instructors, and they would instruct me, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I even bought a logbook, and they logged my time of instruction in a Douglas DC-3. I got 15 hours. And they let me land the plane one time and take off one time. Of course, the instructor right there beside me, instructor pilot. So this is my poem about landing, the first time, my only time of landing the DC-3, and we were coming into Kansas City. And the approach in Kansas City is right over the downtown area where you see all the spires and the skyscrapers and everything. The way the city below was normally gray. I knew that, but on that afternoon it shone gold. Gold with dark canyons and spires. The word impalement did cross my mind. The way the airplane wobbled beneath my fingertips like an airborne box, yet fearless this craft with its knowledge of the air, confident despite the winds, drifts, and buffets. The way the landing gear vibrated in a low, slow om as it lowered. And in the infinitude of that instant when rubber met runway, a suspension of all hope and expectation, and what followed, the deceleration of speed, the plane a bumping cart in a field of stones, carried us to that final stillness and the amazement of my heart to realize it still beating within my chest. And the last of the quartet about flying, about where flying takes place, the sky. The sky is sentient. And the palest blue you could ever imagine, although when you look at its touch is like when a cloud kisses your eyes, because it is sentient, the sky, and it loves you. And when you look up at the sky, it comes closer. And when you drink it, it knows that you love it. And it knows this even though you have no idea how deep your love goes, nor that the sky might send you a dove to dance with you. And so I am telling you all that. I'm telling you all this now so you will know. And not even a sentence written by a dove or the sky could say your love, your amazing love for the light that wraps the ecstasy within which you and the sky are the trembling spectacle of each looking at the sentient other. Okay, so that was the four flying poems. And then I thought I would read you this other one about my grandfather. I've been really into working at ancestral and family history and exploring that. So I have to read this with one of these. So this is about my grandfather. It's called The Fattest Grandfather. Gray, round, smooth history. Curved fenders, light rain. A little fog cries above metal bodies. Tombstones march up square lot. Hills slope and curved like a sheet of paper, offering up some things like desiccated candies, yet somehow graceful. Hoods and trunks, clustered dull windshields, gas tanks, axles, tires, body parts, old cars. Can you see it? It is only the 1930s. This is only my grandfather's salvage yard. You see, there are not many horses left to shoe by the 1930s, so now he rides high on gall, translating what he can do into current commodity and trades in metal organs from recent history. My grandfather was fat in the 1930s when others were lean, A fat grandfather was he, who wore red and black flannel shirts and greasy chinos and a fat black welder's mask from Mars. He carried incandescents, shooting from a slender black wand held in his hand, gloved like medieval mail. It could blind you stricken if you looked at it too long, if you looked at its Medusa sparks. He sliced and spliced with it and cursed like an ancient blacksmith and made money with it in the open shop. While others were lean, he grew fat by urging metal to change and melt and freeze again into shapes of his bidding. I watched once while he worked, and the sparks fell like tiny stars at his feet. And there were ice-hot blues, and there were white-hot whites. So he stood and worked on a cloud of stars. He had a drinking problem, my mother said. Whiskey my grandfather liked, and Indian women, like his mother, who died young, and like that same part of him, yes. And he liked whiskey, my grandfather. The rain is falling, and it is Sunday in the salvage yard beside his rock house of native stone. I floated last night among the old corpses with their glass-eyed windows splintered spider webs and their door limbs missing, hacked, with their seats unstuffing and gentle grime lightly resting where proud bottoms once waited for destinations. And but there is a smell. It is a sweet smell of wet earth and wet dust and wet oil and wet metal and wet upholstery and wet glass and wet time and wet whiskey. And that was the smell of my grandfather. Yes. Okay, so that's all I have today. And I thank you very much for allowing me to come and read my poems. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of our readers today. And again, get out there and enjoy April National Poetry Month and have a wonderful time exploring all of the online and in person coming back poetry in your area or online. Thank you for watching. This is Diane Funston, YubaSutterArts&Culture's Poet in Residence. Again, a big thank you to YubaSutterArts&Culture for having the possibility of poetry and Zooming into your home every month. And next month, we're going to have three ladies that are all very different in their approach to poetry. We're going to hear from Izzy Lala. We're going to hear from Peggy Seeley and also from Susan Block. And again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month.